Hi, this is Dan Heisman, Philly tutor for Chess FM. This is the Improve Your Chess series for ICC members. In today's game, we're going to look at a 45-45 amateur game. It's a very typical amateur game. We're going to see some of the same themes we've seen in previous games. If you can learn from other people's games, this is the kind of game which really tells you, what you shouldn't be doing a lot of the times, because we see the same kind of mistakes over and over again. And I'm not just talking about, missing a tactic or something like that, but actually using your time unwisely, not making the best, doing the best you can, and really trying to figure things out. One of the things I tell everybody is the reason why most people are bad at endgames isn't because they don't study endgames. It's because you can't hide your lack of analysis in the endgame. In the opening, you can kind of wing it a little. You can learn some book. In the middle game, if you and your opponent aren't very good at analysis, you can both make moves that sort of look like you know what you're doing. But in the end game, sometimes you get to positions where you just have to figure it out. You have to do solid analysis. It's not a question of what you know. It's not a question of what you learned in the end games. It's a question of just saying, if I go here and he goes here and I go here and he goes here, is this a win or a loss or a draw? And a lot of people don't do that. They don't even try. They just make their moves on general principles. Well, that's not how good players play. If they can figure out in the end game which moves get a win and which moves get a draw, they're going to figure it out. Now, some end games are way too hard to figure that out, but some aren't. And if you don't even try when you can figure it out, I kind of call that hand waving. And of course, if you're one of those people who really doesn't practice analyzing positions carefully, then you're pretty much always going to be behind the people who can. And everybody has the capability of analyzing positions. It's just a matter of practicing and getting to do it better and better. All right, so let's get right to our game. In today's game, white played d4. Black had studied up for this game, and he knew that white liked to play d4, c4. So black is a Gruenfeld player, and he plays d5. And white plays c takes, knight takes e4. This is the exchange variation, the most popular line. Knight takes c3, b takes c3. And now the old line is bishop g7, bishop c4, castles, knight e2 to avoid pins with bishop g4, so you can just play f3, and then c5 and bishop e3 and knight c6, putting a lot of pressure. It's a big fight for this d4 square. But in this game, white plays the modern variation, knight f3. Now, when I first started playing many, many years ago, this was considered inaccurate because black could kind of remove the guard here and take the knight. But in the 1980s, they figured out that this is perfectly good for white. So castle, bishop e2, c5. Here, white has a variety of moves. There are some lines with rook to b1 here. White plays bishop e3. And now black could play b6. He can play knight d7. He decides to play knight c6. And computer says, it may not be the best move, but it's okay. And now white should castle with a nice little white advantage. Maybe that is a reason why knight c6 is not the most accurate, as if white castles. Instead, white plays the kind of inaccurate move h3, which does stop the bishop g4, bishop takes f3 stuff, but it does give black an extra tempo to attack the center when white's not castled. And black does it correctly. He takes the pawn. And now if white takes back with the pawn, the natural move, which is not played in the game, then black can play check. And now white has to be careful because, if he puts his queen here and black takes, he can't take back so he can castle because he's going to lose a pawn. So suppose he plays bishop d2 instead. Black can play queen a3, and the computer says that black has pretty much full equality in this position with the bishop a little awkwardly placed on d2. But instead, white plays the strange-looking move knight takes d4. And now you would think that black should not take that knight and leave the c pawn.